Hello and welcome to another class in history. My name is Ado Libatam Job and our topic for today is Formation of Political Parties in West Africa in the theme Nationalist Movement and Decolonization in Africa. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain why political parties were formed in West Africa, discuss the major political parties in West Africa, and examine the impact of political parties and associations on decolonization and the achievements of independence in West Africa. Let me start by asking you a question. What is West Africa if you were asked? West Africa is a region in the continent of Africa. West Africa was colonized by European powers such as Britain, France, Portugal, and even Spain. These were the major European powers that colonized West Africa. Later on, West Africa gained independence. So as you can see on this map, these are the countries that make up West Africa. You see Nigeria is here, you see Niger is here, you see Benin Republic is here, Togo, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and the rest. These are West African countries. This region gained independence from European powers. That took place in the 20th century. Now, something happened before they gained this independence, and that was called nationalism. Nationalism is simply the struggle to regain political and economic independence. Shortly after the First and Second World War, there was the rise in nationalism in West Africa. This rise was occasioned by the emergence or formation of political parties in West Africa. Although political parties in West Africa were not formed at the same time. For instance, in British West Africa, that is, those countries that were colonized by Great Britain, nationalism was early because the British policy was one that isolated the educated elite from participating in governance. This was why nationalism was early in British West Africa. In French West Africa, that is those countries that were governed by French, it developed later, especially after the Second World War. The same was with those that were governed by Portugal, talking about Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde Island. Several reasons necessitated the formation of different political parties in West Africa. Now let's look at what a political party is. A political party can simply be defined as a group of people who come together because they share the same political ideology to gain and exercise political power. Some factors motivated the formation of political parties in West Africa. Some of them are political participation and rise of nationalism. Political participation. In British West Africa, that is, countries that were colonized by Great Britain, for instance, you have Nigeria, you have Ghana, you have Gambia, and Sierra Leone. The educated elite in these countries were isolated from participating in governance. So, this made them to have that need to participate, and they formed a union that was called the National Congress of British West Africa. It was an association. After the First World War, the British government introduced policies that favored the participation of the indigenes in political process. For instance, in Nigeria, there was the introduction of the Clifford Constitution in 1922. This constitution produced what was called the elective principle. It created what was also called the Legislative Council. This council required that 4 Nigerians were to be elected into the council. This gave room for the formation of the first political party in Nigeria by Herbert Macaulay in 1923. That party was called Nigerian National Democratic Party, NNDP. The party contested and won the 4 seats that was allocated to Nigeria in the election that was conducted that year. Rise in nationalism. This was another reason for the formation of political parties. After the First and Second World War, there was increase in the demand for self-rule. This was as a result of developments around and outside Africa after the war. For instance, the Atlantic Charter Declaration by the then President of America, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and the then British Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, they met somewhere and declared that after the war, that is after the Second World War, that colonized people will be free to choose the form of government under which they will live. This declaration made people in Africa to desire for independence, and this feeling led to the development or formation of political parties. Now let's look at the formation of political parties in West Africa. Various political parties and associations were established or formed in West Africa. Let's consider British West Africa first because it started early in British West Africa. In British West Africa, the first political association that was formed was called the National Congress of British West Africa. This body or association was formed as a reaction to colonial policies in the region. It was formed by the educated elite at Accra in Ghana in the year 1920. The body demanded several things from the colonial authority. For instance, they demanded that a university be established for West Africans. They also demanded that there should be equal rights for Africans and Europeans working in the civil service. They also demanded that hospitals be established and that the judiciary should be independent. These demands led to changes in the policies of the British colonial authority. It also led to the formation of other political parties in West Africa. Let's consider Ghana. In Ghana in 1947, a political party was formed and it was called the United Gold Coast Convention. This political party was formed with the aim of achieving independence for the Gold Coast. Ghana, before independence, was called the Gold Coast. Something happened in the Gold Coast after the formation of this party. There was high rate of inflation, high cost of living, and the people could no longer bear it. And so there was a riot. When this riot broke out, the leaders of this party were held responsible, and so they were being arrested. The members of the youth wing of this party were dissatisfied with the slow rate of action taken by this party. In 1949, Kwame Nkrumah, who was the leader of the youth wing of the party, broke away and formed the Convention People's Party, CPP. This party was the party that led Ghana into independence. Let's talk about Nigeria. In Nigeria, we have already noted that the first political party was the NNDP, that is the Nigerian National Democratic Party, which was established by Herbert Macaulay in 1923. The second political association that was formed in Nigeria was the Nigerian Youth Movement. This body was more broader than the NNDP, and it was formed by Nigerian leading educated elites, including Professor Eyo Ita, Samuel Akinsanya, Ernest Ikoli, and H.O. Davis. Another political party that was established in Nigeria was the National Congress of Nigeria and Cameroon, NCNC. This party was established in 1944 by Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe. 2 years after the formation of this party called NCNC, its youth wing emerged, and it was called the Zikist Movement, and it desired to put an end to colonial rule in Nigeria. Another party that was formed in Nigeria was the Northern People's Congress. This party was formed in the 1950s. It originated from a cultural association in northern Nigeria that was called the Jamiya Mutanem Arewa. This cultural association was established to fight injustice and ignorance in northern Nigeria. But in the early 1950s, to contest election, this cultural association was converted into a political party, and it was led by the then Sardauna of Sokoto, Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. Another major political party established in Nigeria during colonial rule was the Action Group. The Action Group as a party was established in western Nigeria by Chief Obafemi Awolowo. He was the founder of this party, and the party was established to win election in the West, and it became the major opposition party in Nigeria. Political parties and associations were also established in Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone, remember, was one of the British West African colonies. In Sierra Leone, there was the establishment of the West African Youth League. This was done in 1935 by Wallace Johnson. This West African Youth League metamorphosed into another party in 1950, and the party was called National Council of Sierra Leone. Moving on, Another party that was formed in Sierra Leone was the Sierra Leone People's Party. This party was formed in 1951 and it was a merger of two other political parties, and they were Dr. Magai Milton Sierra Leone Organization Society and Mr. Lamila Sankoli's People's Party. These two bodies formed this Sierra Leone People's Party in 1951. Later on, both parties came together in 1960 and formed the United National Front that was led by Dr. Magai Milton. Now let's talk about formation of political parties in French West Africa. Remember we said political parties were not developed early in French West Africa, and this was due to the French policy of assimilation. By this policy of assimilation, France extended citizenship status to the four communes of Senegal only. But after the Second World War, this status was extended beyond the four communes of Senegal. This led to the formation of political parties in French West Africa, not only in Senegal. Before 1946, the only political party that existed in Senegal was the French Socialist Party. But after this period, there was extension of this citizenship, and that led to the formation of other political parties in French West Africa. The first political party to be formed in French West Africa was the Rassemblement Démocratique Africain. This party that was formed in 1946 was also known as African Democratic Rally. This party was formed at a conference that was held in Bamako, Mali, and attended by French delegates. This party was formed under the leadership of Felix Houphouët-Boigny of Ivory Coast. Later on, in 1948, another political party was also established in French West Africa. This party was also known as IOM, or Overseas Independence. This party was established by African deputies in the French National Assembly in 1948. These African deputies were opposed to RODA's communist ideas, and so they established this party. It was led by Léopold Senghor of Senegal. Shortly after this period, in 1948, Léopold Senghor also established another political party in Senegal. This party was called the Senegalese Democratic Bloc. It was established to compete with the French Socialist Party in Senegal, and it served as the major opposition party in Senegal. This brings us to the end of the formation of political parties in French West Africa. Now let's consider the formation of political parties in Portuguese West Africa. Portugal was another European power that also colonized some part of West Africa. Portugal colonized Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde. Like in the French colonies, the development of political party in Portuguese West Africa was also late, like in French West Africa. It was not until 1956 that the first political party emerged in Guinea-Bissau, and this party was called the African Party for the Independence of Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde. This party was established in 1956 to peacefully campaign for independence from Portugal. Unfortunately, this was not forthcoming, and so in the 1960s, the party adopted armed struggle with Portugal in order to gain independence. This was not forthcoming, and so in the 1960s, this party adopted armed struggle with Portugal to achieve its objective, which was to gain independence from Portugal. Now let's look at the objectives for the formation of political parties in West Africa. What were the aims of forming political parties in West Africa? That is what we are going to consider now. Political parties and associations that were formed in West Africa during the colonial era had similar aims and objectives. 1. To enhance African participation in governance. The aim of forming these political parties and associations was to advocate for the people to take part in governance. They were avenues by which Africans were elected to serve in the legislative councils. 2. To earn equal political and social rights for Africans. These political parties and associations served as avenues where the people demanded for improvement in their welfare. For instance, in the civil service, they demanded that Africans and Europeans with the same qualification should be paid the same salaries. They also demanded that schools, universities, and hospitals should be established for the people of West Africa. Thirdly, political parties and associations were formed to achieve regional and national unity in West Africa. Like you see in West Africa, there was the formation of the National Congress of British West Africa. This association aimed to bring the people together. In French West Africa, there was also the formation of the Rassemblement Démocratique Africain. This political platform aimed at bringing the people together, that is unity. These political parties that were formed at this period aimed at uniting the people or bringing them together. The last but not the least objective for the formation of these political parties and associations was to demand for self-rule or self-government from the colonial government. This objective was the greatest because the parties prepared the people to take over power from the colonial authorities. They demanded for self-rule through constitutional conferences. In this way, they were able to gain independence for the various West African colonies from their colonial masters. Now let's consider the strategies adopted by political parties in West Africa to fight colonial rule. Political parties in West Africa adopted various strategies to fight colonialism or colonial rule in West Africa. Some of these techniques were petitions. Political parties in West Africa wrote petitions to the colonial governments. For instance, the National Congress of British West Africa, NCBWA, wrote a petition and sent some delegates to meet with the Colonial Secretary for State for the colonies in West Africa, and they requested that their demands be attended to. Another strategy or technique adopted by political parties in West Africa was the media. The mass media include radio, television, newspapers, magazines, and others, but in this case we are referring to newspapers. During colonial time, the print media or newspapers were established. They were established to criticize colonial policies as well as communicate political ideas of these political parties to the people. In this way, they were able to fight colonial rule in West Africa. Another strategy adopted to fight colonial rule was by legislation. By legislation, we mean lawmaking. Members of these political parties were elected to represent the people in the various national assemblies as well as regional assemblies. Through this lawmaking process, they were able to bring about reforms. They introduced changes that gradually led to the independence of various colonies in West Africa. Also, campaigns and political rallies was another means or strategy adopted to fight colonial rule in West Africa. Political parties normally organize campaigns. Political parties do organize campaigns and rallies, and in these rallies, they criticize the policies of the government, and the people rally around them or supported them in their cause to take over power from the colonial masters. In this way, they were able to fight colonial rule in West Africa. Lastly, is constitutional conferences. Political party members, those who were elected to represent the people, attended constitutional conferences. These conferences were organized by the European masters, the colonial masters that were in power. They organized these conferences, but Africans also participated in it. At these conferences, they negotiated and demanded for changes. These changes translated into independence. So in this way, they were also able to fight colonial rule in Africa. Now let's consider the impact of political parties and associations in West Africa. The impact of political parties and associations in West Africa was especially on decolonization and the achievement of independence. By this, we are saying that political parties and associations played an important role in the decolonization process. Decolonization, we are looking at the process whereby colonial rule was gradually dethroned. We are looking at the process that gradually led to the independence of various colonies in West Africa. Political parties and associations did this by calling on the colonial masters to reform colonial policies in their various colonies. They also demanded for self-rule, and this eventually led to the independence of various colonies in West Africa. Therefore, their impact on decolonization and the achievement of independence cannot be overemphasized. Now let's take a look at what we have done so far. We learned that political parties were formed in West Africa as a result of some factors like political participation and rise of nationalism. Also, some of the political parties formed in West Africa were Nigerian National Democratic Party in 1923, that was in Nigeria, the Convention People's Party in 1949, that is Ghana, and in French West Africa you have the Rassemblement Démocratique Africain, that was in 1946. Moving on, we learned that the objectives of the political parties were to enhance African participation in government and to bring about self-rule. Furthermore, we learned that the strategies adopted in fighting colonial rule were petitions, the mass media, and constitutional conferences. Lastly, we learned that political parties contributed to the achievement of independence by calling for reforms in colonial policies and self-rule. Now we have come to the end of the lesson, but before we go, let's take some questions to test our knowledge. Question 1. Which of the following reasons accounted for the formation of political parties in West Africa? A. Campaigns and rallies. B. Political participation. Or C. Colonization. The correct answer is B. Political participation. Question 2. The main impact of the formation of political parties and associations in West Africa during the colonial era was the A. Emergence of the educated elite, B. Increase in political campaigns, or C. Achievement of independence. The correct answer is C. Achievement of independence. I want to believe that you can now explain the reasons for the formation of political parties in West Africa, as well as discuss the major political parties that were formed in West Africa. Thank you and bye for now.